Hello. My name is Luna. I'm 62 years old. And for the last 4 years, I've been living in a cozy 2-story house in Boise, Idaho, with my daughter Rachel and her 2 kids, Ethan and Sophie. People think retirement is a peaceful chapter. For me, it felt more like a second full-time job, unpaid, unseen, and always expected. You see, Rachel went through a nasty divorce. Her husband left her with nothing but 2 little ones and a mountain of overdue bills. She was working at Amazon's fulfillment center, barely scraping by. When the bank wouldn't approve her for a mortgage, I stepped in. I co-signed the loan and used $50. Zero of my own savings for the down payment. She called it temporary. She said, "Just until I get back on my feet." Mom. But temporary turned into years. Every month, my pension check lands right on time. $1. Woo-bye. From that, $900 goes straight to the mortgage. The rest, utilities, groceries, internet, cable. I don't even watch television except old black and white movies on Sunday nights. It's not that I regret helping. I love my daughter. I love my grandkids. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being mom and became the money. I watch the neighborhood from my kitchen window most days. There's Mr. Walter Grady across the street, former firefighter. Widowed. Quiet as a whisper. Every morning at 7:00 a.m. Sharp. He waters his lawn and sweeps his front porch like clockwork. Sometimes, I wonder what it's like to live a life with no drama. No one shouting. No one asking for one more thing. That afternoon, I was sipping chamomile tea, my husband's favorite, and flipping through bills. Electricity, $137. Gas, $92. Cable, $165. I barely use any of it. But Rachel and the kids, they live off this house like it's a hotel. A free one. I don't complain. I never do. But deep down, something in me was starting to fray. And I didn't know it yet. But that was the day the unraveling would begin. And nothing would ever be the same again. That evening, just before the sky turned to that soft winter pink, the front door flew open. Rachel came in first, hair pulled up, Amazon badge still clipped to her shirt, followed by Sophie, chattering about a school art project, and Ethan, who had his headphones in and didn't say a word. The usual. She didn't even take off her coat before dropping her bag on the table and saying, "Mom, we need to talk." I didn't even flinch. I'd heard that line too many times. She sat across from me, eyes tired but voice sharp. Ethan's Chromebook completely died. School's gone all digital this year. His teachers won't even accept handwritten work anymore. I nodded slowly. How much? Cheapest one I found, $790. And she looked away, like she was ashamed or pretending to be. Sophie's grown out of her winter boots. And the school's offering an after-school art program she's dying to join. Registration's $180. I sipped my tea and stayed quiet. She wasn't done. There's also that plumbing thing in the kitchen. The faucet's leaking again. We can't keep putting it off. It'll be around $300. Maybe more. Total over $1. Lambe. That's almost my entire monthly pension. Again. I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Rachel, how much do you make a month? She shrugged. About $2. $900 after taxes. That's more than me. I said flatly. Where does it all go, Mom? Groceries are insane. Gas. Car insurance. Ethan's phone plan. Sophie's school lunches. I buy their clothes. I keep the car running. What do you want me to do? Stop feeding my kids. I pay for the mortgage. I said quietly. And the cable. And the heat. And the Wi-Fi. She rolled her eyes. Yeah. And I pay for literally everything else. I looked out the window. Mr. Grady was out on his porch again. Like always. Calm. Methodical. Not a single person asking him for anything. Rachel's voice pulled me back. I'm not trying to guilt trip you, Mom. But I need help. Again. It's not a luxury. It's survival. I didn't respond. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I believed her anymore. I sat there, quietly holding my mug, letting the steam fade. Rachel drummed her fingers against the table. She hated silence. It made her uncomfortable. But I was tired of filling every gap with surrender. Then she said it. Mom, this isn't just your house. We're both on the mortgage. It's as much mine as it is yours. I blinked. It didn't matter that I'd paid the entire down payment. That I'd put my retirement savings on the line so she and the kids could have a roof over their heads after her divorce. It didn't matter that every month, I quietly sent in $900 so the bank wouldn't come knocking. In her eyes, I was just another name on paper. I tried to keep my voice steady. You think this house is yours? It is. Legally. She shot back. We're both on the deed. And I'm the one raising 2 kids here. There it was. Not gratitude. Not understanding. Just entitlement. She leaned forward. Look, I've been thinking. Maybe it would be easier if you just gave me your pension each month. All of it. I stared at her. You wouldn't have to worry about the bills or budgeting. I'd manage everything. You'd get, say, $100 a month for spending money. I actually laughed. I didn't mean to. But it escaped like a cough. She crossed her arms. I'm serious. It's not fair that you're sitting on savings while I'm drowning every month. You want to help the family, then trust me to run the household finances. And if I say no, I asked. She hesitated. Then came the blow. Then maybe you need to find somewhere else to stay. It was like someone had turned the thermostat down to 0. She said it so casually, like she wasn't throwing her own mother out into the cold. I didn't answer. I just stood up, walked to the sink, and rinsed out my tea. Because at that moment, I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here anymore. Not like this. That night, after everyone went to bed, I opened the hallway closet and pulled out my old black suitcase, the one I hadn't used in nearly a decade. It still smelled like cedar and winter air. I packed slowly. 3 sweaters. 2 pairs of jeans. My wool coat. My arthritis pills. Toothbrush. My favorite novel. Bookmarked, halfway. And the framed photo of my late husband, George. Taken on our 20th anniversary in Montana. He had a smile that made you believe everything would be okay. I stood in my room for a long time, staring at the walls. Then I walked into the kitchen, took one last look around, and quietly opened the front door. The air outside was sharp. Still. The kind of night that presses into your skin. Across the street, Walter's porch light was still on. I stood at his gate for a few seconds, unsure. What would I say? Hi. My daughter just tried to evict me. Mind if I crash for a while? It sounded pathetic. Even in my head. But standing on that sidewalk with a suitcase and nowhere to go felt worse. So I climbed the 3 steps and knocked gently. A few seconds later, the porch light flickered brighter. And I heard slow, Deliberate footsteps. Then the door creaked open, and Walter stood there in his flannel pajamas, looking half surprised, half concerned. "Luna," he said, eyes falling to my suitcase. "Is everything all right?" I cleared my throat. "Not exactly. I just need a place to catch my breath. Just for a night or two." He didn't ask any more questions. "Come in," he said softly, stepping aside. "It's cold out. Inside." His house smelled like black coffee and old wood. Simple furniture. A bookshelf lined with mystery novels and National Geographic magazines. A few photos of his late wife on the mantel, smiling with sunflowers in her hands. He led me to the guest room at the top of the stairs. "It's not fancy," he said, setting my suitcase down. "But it's warm. And it's yours." I looked at him, unsure how to say thank you in a way that would feel like enough. But he just smiled and said, "Rest? Luna, you're safe here." And for the first time in years, I believed it. The guest room was simple cream-colored walls, a hand-stitched quilt folded neatly at the end of the bed, and white lace curtains fluttering in the draft. It wasn't grand, but it felt like peace. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands still gripping the handle of my suitcase. My heart was racing, even though there was nothing to run from anymore. Walter brought up a cup of tea, real tea. Loose leaf. Not the bags Rachel always bought in bulk. "Chamomile," he said. "For the nerves." I smiled weakly. "You read my mind." We sat in silence for a while. It wasn't awkward. It was gentle, like the quiet had permission to just exist between us. Through the window, I could see the lights still on in my house. Rachel was probably pacing the living room, checking her phone, wondering if I was bluffing. She wasn't used to me walking away. Walter leaned back in his armchair, the old wood creaking beneath him. "You don't have to tell me what happened," he said, eyes kind, but knowing. "But if you want to talk, I'm here." I stared into my tea. She said I should give her my pension. All of it. She offered me $100 a month to spend on myself. Walter didn't flinch, just nodded slowly. "My son once asked me to co-sign a loan for a Tesla. Said it was an investment in his future. He's 39. I chuckled, more out of recognition than amusement. "What did you do?" I told him no. Then he stopped calling. Funny how that works. He stood and walked to the fireplace, tossing another log in. The room glowed warm again. "You're not wrong to set a line," he added. "People only treat us like doormats if we lie down and act like one." I sat there, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time seen. Walter didn't want anything from me. No favors. No handouts. Just company. Just respect. And in that quiet living room, sipping tea from a mismatched mug, I felt something settle in my chest, not anger. Not fear, but dignity. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not fireworks. Just silence that didn't hurt anymore. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I saw the soft light filtering through Walter's lace curtains and remembered the suitcase. The tea. The silence that didn't sting. Downstairs, Walter was standing at the stove in a flannel robe, flipping pancakes like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Morning," he said, without turning around. "Hope you like crispy edges." "I like not having to cook." I smiled, settling into the worn kitchen chair. There was a newspaper on the table. Folded to the crossword page. Everything about this place felt untouched by chaos. We ate in near silence, with only the sound of rain tapping gently on the roof. After breakfast, while Walter rinsed dishes, I took out my phone and stared at the screen. 11 missed calls. 8 texts. All from Rachel. The last one read, "Mom. Please. Where are you? The mortgage didn't process. The bank called. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I called the bank. "Hi. I'd like to cancel the automatic mortgage withdrawal from my account," I said. The woman on the other end was polite. "Just so you're aware, this means the primary borrower is fully responsible for the monthly payment." I understand. One by one, I called the electric company, the gas company, the internet provider, canceled every auto payment linked to me. By noon, I was shaking. Not out of guilt, but from the adrenaline of finally taking control. My money. My boundary. My life. I turned off my phone completely. Let Rachel wonder. Let her pause. Let her, for once, face the math of her own choices. That afternoon, Walter and I sat on his porch with 2 mugs of coffee and a blanket over our knees. "You look lighter," he said. "I canceled everything." I told him. Mortgage. Utilities. Cable. Done. He nodded slowly. "She's gonna notice." She already has. And what happens now? I sipped my coffee and exhaled. Now, we find out what she's really made of. Because for once, she wouldn't be leaning on me. And for the first time in years, I wouldn't be bending. It didn't take long. By that evening, Rachel was calling from a different number. I didn't answer. Then came the emails. The tone shifted with each one, first frustration, then panic, then a vague attempt at guilt. "The kids miss you." Sophie cried herself to sleep. I didn't reply. Not yet. But the next morning, I heard a soft knock on Walter's front door. When I opened it, I nearly cried. Sophie stood there in her little puffer jacket, backpack slipping off one shoulder, holding a slightly squished bouquet of dandelions. "Grandma," she said, eyes wide. "You really are here." I stepped out, dropped to my knees, and hugged her tight. "I missed you," she whispered. "Mom said you were visiting Aunt Jill in Nevada." "But we don't have an Aunt Jill." I smiled. "Your mom just didn't know what to say. Sometimes grown-ups don't have the right words." Sophie nodded solemnly, as if she understood more than a 10-year-old should. "I brought you flowers," she said, handing me the bouquet. "And Mom's making your favorite chicken pot pie tonight. She said if you came back, we'd all eat together like before." My throat tightened. The innocence. The hope. But I couldn't be pulled back by a plate of warm food. "I'll come by tonight," I said gently. "But just to talk? Grown-up talk." Okay. She smiled. "Can we still watch that old baking show together later? We'll see." Sweet pea. She hugged me again. Tighter this time. Then skipped back down the walkway toward home. I stood there for a long moment. Flowers in hand. Heart in pieces. Walter stepped out beside me, holding a second cup of coffee. He didn't say anything, just handed it over and looked toward the street. "She's a good kid," he finally said. "She is," I replied. "None of this is her fault." "Nope. But kids have a way of being the mirror, showing you what really matters." I looked down at the dandelions. Bright. Stubborn things. Growing where they shouldn't. Surviving in places people try to mow down. That night, I would walk back into that house. But this time, I wouldn't come with my hands full of solutions. I would come with terms and a spine. At 7:55 p.m., I stood on the porch of the house I'd helped build, but hadn't stepped foot in for a week. Rachel opened the door before I even knocked. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Hair pulled back. Sweatshirt worn thin. Eyes puffy. "Mom," she said. Quietly. "Thanks for coming. I promised Sophie." I replied. The smell of chicken pot pie filled the hallway. Sophie peeked around the corner and waved excitedly. Ethan barely looked up from the couch. But he muttered, "Hey, Grandma," which was more than I expected from a teenager. "Let's talk in the kitchen," Rachel said, motioning me inside. The table was already set. Tea. A plate of cookies. My favorite mug. She was trying. I gave her that. We sat across from each other like two diplomats at a summit. "I owe you an apology," Rachel began. "Not just for what I said, but for how I've treated you. I didn't realize. I took so much for granted. I didn't rush in with forgiveness. I let the silence breathe. I looked over our expenses." She continued, "And I finally get it. You weren't being controlling. You were keeping this family from drowning. And I never even looked up." She pulled out a notebook, lines of scribbled numbers, highlighted bills, and ideas. "I've already canceled cable. I'm listing the old PlayStation on Facebook Marketplace. And I applied for a weekend gig driving delivery for DoorDash." I nodded slowly. "You're trying," I said. "I am." "Good. Because if I come back, it won't be like before." Rachel leaned in. "Tell me what you need." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. 5 conditions," I said, placing it on the table. 1. We make a monthly family budget. Every dollar accounted for. 2. We each contribute $1. Oh, 0 from me. 200 from you. That pays for the house. Utilities. Groceries. Everything. Rachel nodded. Already writing. 3. No purchases over $100 without both of us agreeing. 4. The kids get a weekly allowance and learn to manage it. And 5. Most important, we respect each other. No ultimatums. No emotional blackmail. No yelling." She looked up at me. "I can do that." I held her gaze. "Not just for a week." She didn't blink. "For good." I exhaled. And for the first time in years, felt something shift, not in her, but in us. The next morning, I returned not just with my suitcase, but with a different posture. Head up, shoulders squared. Not as a guest in someone else's home, but as a woman reclaiming her own. Rachel greeted me at the door with fresh coffee and tired eyes. "I cleared space in the hall closet for your things," she said. "Thank you," I replied. "But let's start with the budget." We sat at the dining room table, and this time, there were no excuses. No sighs. Just 2 adults doing what should have been done years ago. She pulled out her notebook. I pulled out my calculator. We listed everything: mortgage, utilities, groceries, gas, school lunches, soccer fees. Then, we added 2 new columns, mine and hers. It wasn't just about money. It was about clarity, accountability. And when it was done, Rachel leaned back and said, "We can make this work. You'll need to tighten things," I warned. She nodded. "Already planned on canceling the gym. I haven't gone in months." That afternoon, she and the kids helped carry my suitcase upstairs. Ethan didn't say much, but he gave me a quiet fist bump. Progress. Sophie was practically dancing. Can we do movie night again? Grandma, only if you stay under your new allowance. I teased. That night, we had dinner together. No yelling. No tension. Just conversation, simple and warm. After the kids went to bed, Rachel and I stood at the sink, side by side, washing dishes like old times. She dried her hands and turned to me. Thank you for giving me the chance to fix this. I looked at her, not as the daughter who once demanded my pension, but as a woman trying to stand on her own. Don't thank me yet. I said, let's see how the next month goes. She smiled. Deal. I headed upstairs, my suitcase now unpacked. My bed made. My room mine again. Outside the window, I saw Mr. Grady's porch light still glowing across the street. A quiet signal. I whispered to the night. I'm back. But this time, not as a safety net. Not as a silent sacrifice. This time, I came back on my terms. A few weeks passed. The leaves outside turned from amber to frost. Thanksgiving was around the corner. And for once, the only thing heavy in the house was the smell of cinnamon rolls. Not tension. Rachel had stuck to the budget. She picked up extra weekend deliveries, sold off old electronics, and most shockingly canceled her weekly nail appointments. She hadn't missed them as much as she expected. One evening, after a simple dinner of pasta and salad, she handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked. My first contribution to the savings fund. She said proudly. $50. It's not much. But it's mine. I opened it, looked at the small stack of bills, and smiled. You're starting somewhere. That's more than enough. The kids adjusted. 2. Ethan stopped asking for new video games every month. Sophie learned how to stretch her allowance and even started saving up for her art supplies. The change wasn't overnight. There were bumps. Of course. But now, when Rachel and I disagreed, we talked instead of raising our voices. We asked instead of assuming. We paused instead of pushing. One quiet Saturday, we sat on the back porch with mugs of hot cocoa. Rachel looked over at me and said, You know what I've realized? Mom, what's that? I wasn't angry because I needed help. I was angry because I was afraid. Afraid I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't say anything right away. Then I placed my hand on hers and said, and now she exhaled. I'm still scared sometimes. But now I know I can try. And I don't need to control everything to feel secure. I nodded. That's how you grow. One boundary at a time. She smiled through glassy eyes. Thank you. For not saving me. For making me save myself. I looked out across the yard toward Walter's house. His porch light was on. As always, a quiet reminder of the night I finally chose myself. And I thought maybe healing doesn't look like fireworks. Maybe it looks like this? A warm mug. A full fridge. And a daughter who finally learned how to stand tall. Not because I carried her, but because, one day, I stepped back and let her rise.